Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live experience here on the Twitch. This is Tunesday Tuesday number 11 with yours truly, Boston Chris. And this week we have a really special guest. My buddy Julia Hatfield is going to be joining us here in a couple of minutes. We were just listening to her song called Tears. And we're going to get caught up with Julia on everything that's been happening with her, which is quite a lot. And I'm really excited to talk with her. It's been a lot of years since Julia and I have chatted. So it'll be cool to catch up with her. If you are watching this later on, though, on YouTube, please know that this show is live every single Tuesday on Twitch. And you can find that show at twitch.tv/ The Boston Chris Show. If you are watching this on YouTube and this is not the full episode and just the interview, just remember that you can find the full replay of this episode of Tunesday Tuesday in the description below. But anyway, without any further ado, we are going to get into it with Julia Hatfield. And we're going to be talking about her song Opinions, which is fabulous, guys. You guys are going to love this song. Here we go. Let's get into it with Miss Julia Hatfield.
I'm good.
Good to hear it. Good to hear it. I was just telling everybody that it has been a minute since you and I spoke.
It has. And you know what? I went back and listened to our last interview, and I think I had just left high school.
Right, I know. Like you were a baby, and then it wasn't long after that we hung out at one of the award shows there in Arlington, if you remember that.
Yeah.
But you have come a long way since then, and I want to chat about just 2024 was such a big year for you in so many different ways, musically and personally.
Yep.
First of all, congratulations on getting married. That's a new thing, right?
Thank you. Yep, we got married in October.
So newlyweds, how's it going so far?
Perfect. It's been really good. We remodeled an RV earlier this year, and so since we got married, we've been in the RV and traveling around, and we love it. So it's been great.
The RV life, that's new and different.
It is. I've been wanting to do it for a long time, but there's just so many logistical things you have to iron out. And honestly, having somebody to do it with makes a big difference.
Absolutely. It takes away those alone times. But at the same time, man, it's hard to find your use space with such a small spot, too, right?
That's why I got my headphones. He knows if the headphones are on, that means I'm in my own world.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be remiss. We just played your song "Tears," and
Cool.
I want to talk to you a lot about mental health advocacy and things like that. I know that's really important to you from following what you've been doing over the years. But this song has a lot of value in that sphere with self-belief and being a victor rather than a victim. So first, before we get into the song we're going to feature tonight, which is called Opinions, tell us about Tears a little bit as well, since we just played that one for everybody.
So Tears, I wrote probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, and I had heard that someone that I knew had committed suicide, and it was somebody who I would have not ever expected. And I don't know, that just really... Anytime you hear of this, it hits you really hard. But when you know somebody, it all of a sudden becomes, you realize the extent of that pain and how it's a ripple effect for everybody. And I just kept thinking, I wish I had asked him if he was doing okay. Just never thought to. And he seemed fine. He was one of the happiest people you'd ever meet. So he was a producer. He loved music. And so it just was really unexpected. And we weren't super close or anything, but in the interactions that I had with him, it just got me to thinking that, you never know what people are going through. Mm-hmm. No idea. And sometimes it's too late before you know that they needed somebody. And so I think with my music, especially lyrically, I just try to be honest. So it encourages other people to be honest with themselves or honest with somebody about what's going on, what they're struggling with. So this song was definitely not like the happiest song, but I'm not known for my happy songs. I think it speaks to something pretty in depth, and I think we all, can have an experience that ties to that message.
When you put a song out like that, that's uber vulnerable like that. You're a live performer as well, so So you gotta kind of sell and market these songs to an audience too. So that's going to be tough too, right? Like
Oh yeah.
those
Well,
super
that
like
song
soul wrenching
honestly,
songs.
yeah. Well, that song honestly, the past few years, I've been working more on my music fitting more of a TV, television platform because growing up, I was really inspired by soundtracks and still am. I listen to a lot of soundtracks. And I feel like there's different eras and multiple genres of music that people use more of a symphony element, more strings, more emotion. And so the songs that I'm releasing are definitely more emotion driven. But the intention is for them to go along with some other piece of art that it can be paired with. And so it's definitely not the happy radio song for sure.
So do you find yourself having to get into a certain mental space when you're in front of an audience and having to kind of deliver these songs to people?
I think it all depends on the environment. And quite honestly, there are some of the songs, depending on how deep they are, there's some settings, like if you're at a honky tonk, Tears is just
Right, right.
not gonna be the song. I'm gonna play one of my country, radio songs. And so I think it just comes down to finding the right setting and feeling it out and making sure it's appropriate for.
Essentially reading the room, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, sometimes I've totally had to sing a hymn at the honky tonk at the end of a show, and it turned into a little gospel thing. So you never know what's gonna happen. Sometimes you can end up using it after all.
Yeah,
But
reading the room can sometimes fail. For
yes,
sure.
yeah,
Sometimes sometimes the people you need to reach are in the places where they shouldn't be. You know what I mean?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing, your name came up in an interview I did earlier this year with Jarrett Reddick, and
Oh,
I found out that you guys are super close, and
yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh, man, I told him, I said I've known Julius, and she was knee high to a grasshopper, and he's just such a huge fan of yours. What was that like, kind of hanging out with him for a few shows over the summer?
It's very humbling because I met Jarrett through a mutual friend, and it was very casual. And I am going to be completely honest. I had no idea that he sung the Phineas and Ferb theme song.
Right? Me
And
either.
so we become friends, and we're at a birthday party, and my friend Keegan was like, he mentioned something about it just very casually. And I just looked at him like, you're lying to me, right? And then thinking about it, I'm like, this makes so much sense. I ran up to Jarrett and I was like, you sang the soundtrack of my childhood, and I didn't know. And
That's so funny.
he thought that was hilarious. But he ended up asking me to come out on the road with him. And something I love about Jarrett is he most of the time has a female opener.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in Texas, usually it's the guy hires his buddy to open the show, and
Yep.
so he's really made a statement in the way that he has hired women to open for him. But the time that we got together on the road was really special and bonded a lot.
Jarrett doesn't follow any rules anyway, which I love about him. He's so at home in the Texas genre in country music. You would never believe that in a million years from where he came from and what he's been doing all his life. But he's so dang passionate about Texas country, and I'm just glad that people are allowing him in, accepting him, and because he belongs, and there's a place for folks like him.
He's got the biggest heart, and
Absolutely,
honestly,
yep.
you know how it is in the music industry. You come across a lot of people, you realize, oh, this person's heart doesn't quite match their talent.
Right.
And Jarrett is the opposite of that. He's got as big a heart as he does a talent. So yeah, anytime that I've gotten with Jarrett has always been a huge blessing, and I'm trying to talk him into maybe a duet. So we'll see.
You guys should sit and write too. That would be interesting.
He's got such a cool approach. I mean, his songs are so refreshing, especially at shows, because they'll throw 1985 in there at the end, but it's got this wicked fiddle part, and I just love it. I love how he's taken his thing and combined it with his home, and I think that's really special.
And I mean, at the end of the day, he's from the Wichita Falls area, as Texas as anybody else. So I hate when people give folks flack for not being country or whatever and then trying to be country or whatever. Jarrett grew up here, so yeah, it is what it is.
And we played in his hometown and they showed up. That was an awesome show.
Well, they show up for him anyway, regardless of what he's going to do. He's just one of the most talented people ever. I mean, in anything, whether whatever it is. He's also the Chuck E. Cheese guy, right? Like he did the Chuck E. Cheese stuff, which I was blown away by. I was like, no, man, there's nothing this guy doesn't do.
Well, he's got that most recent thing where they did a song, and this is with Bowling for Soup, but they did a cover of Alibaba Had the 40 Thieves, the Aladdin song.
Yep.
It's so good.
It's really, really good. So I just saw this come across my desk, and I'm pretty excited about this. And if I am, I know you are. The Big Barn Dance. You are a part of this year. If you guys don't know, this is I believe this is an annual thing that happens in Bryan, Texas. It's the Michael Hearn's Big Barn Dance, and Julia is on this bill on Friday, March 28th, including other folks like Gary P. Nunn and no big deal, Bruce Robinson and just a couple of no-name people, right? Julia, this is huge. I think you're the only female that night too, so congrats.
Well, thank you. So I'm from that area, and I've been playing more, honestly, in the College Station area than I had in a while, and they reached out to me about it, and I was so excited because it's kind of becoming a thing here, and they're kind of like adding states on, so it's becoming a tradition for a lot of different people, and I'm really excited to be a part of that.
It's I saw the billing today, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to announce, I have to say something about this because you and I have talked over the years. You and I have talked over the years about women songwriters, Texas women in country, and we're both very passionate about more opportunities for the ladies in Texas. So like a festival like this, when I see folks like Courtney Patton's on here, and Terry Hendricks, and then there's Julia Hatfield. There she is. Just super proud of you.
Thanks.
And so let's get back into the mental health advocacy. I know this is on your website, and this is important to you. Are there certain organizations that you support, and if so, tell us about them.
Well, so I've done like a bunch of different stuff with a multitude of organizations over the years, and it really started when I recorded that Tom Petty song. And it was a cover of I Won't Back Down. I like to do a tribute song on my projects, if they're EP, full length, whatever. And at that time, I ended up getting connected with OK to Say. And they ended up having me come out and speak before a movie release that had like Michael Phelps, a lot of different Olympic athletes. And it was speaking specifically on children with OCD and anxiety disorder. And growing up, I was just wrecked with both of those things. And that was really encouraging to go in and be able to perform that song, even though it's not mine. It's just a timeless message, and pair it with being more open about these conversations, because I feel like there's a lot of kids out there who are struggling, and nobody is thinking about maybe they need to be diagnosed with something. I know for me, I was terrified with my anxiety and my OCD, not knowing what it was as a child. After I was diagnosed and was able to, work on it from there, it made a world of difference to just know what it was and know that other people struggle with it and it's not abnormal.
We as a society have to try to remove the stigma behind any kind of mental health thing, because it's ridiculous, right? Like, I mean, we're all so caught up about physical health, and we know that mental health is lacking behind, and yet, people still want to create some kind of flex if you're not dealing with mental health, and that if you are, that you're a wuss or whatever it is. And again, the internet age is kind of, in my opinion, not helping with this either, because the lack of accountability on the internet is creating a lot of situations where people can just say whatever they want. And, people are actually going out of their way to try to blow other people's candles out. And unfortunately, the people like you who are speaking up about this, I said unfortunately, but I didn't mean that. Fortunately, there are people like you who are speaking up in using their platforms, saying, hey, this is something I've dealt with my entire life. This is real. This is something we need to remove the veil on. And honestly, it's going to take that and a lot of other folks just like you in order to get our representation to actually start spending money on this stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
on a global scale. And then, we remove the stigma, then more people will be open about it and less people will lose their lives over it, in my opinion.
For sure. For sure. I think we're also in the age of people are like, stop bringing attention to all sorts of stuff. Like, we don't want to know. And I'm like, that's not the attitude to have.
And those
I
are the
think,
people that say that are usually dealing with it themselves, and just they,
oh,
they don't
oh yeah.
want to admit it, right? Like, it's almost like they treat it like an accusation rather than, advocacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of
I
people
think,
get really defensive when they're called out or feel like they're being called out on something, even if they're not being called out.
yeah, I feel like it's more a reaction than anything.
Absolutely. But like I said, the more people that are loud about this, the better it will be viewed. And, you know, no politics here at all, but like, you and I live in Texas, and Texas is predominantly one of the worst states when it comes to mental health protection and care and all of that stuff. And I hope that changes someday, because
Yeah.
I deal with it too, right? Like, I have anxiety. I'm almost 50 years old. I've dealt with more anxiety in the last couple of years than my whole life. So
Yeah.
I get it. And we just have to be unafraid in our advocacy. And I know you are, and you do a lot of stuff. You do a lot of shows and stuff like that, benefits for things like that as well. And I wanted to make sure that we talked about that tonight, because I know it's important to
Thank you.
you.
I appreciate that because it's definitely something that's close to my heart. And as an artist, and as somebody who believes in the power of music, the more you can communicate and be honest, it's just giving people more permission to do the same. And so, like
Absolutely.
I said, more people who write honest songs, the more people are to be honest with themselves.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a big step. And so kudos. Um, So there's two songs we're going to be chatting about tonight. The obviously your single that's out right now will be one that we feature tonight, but we also do a song of the week that our guest gets to pick. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about what Julia has decided to feature this week. It's Cajun Moon by J.J. Cale. That's the song of the week from Julia Hatfield. Why'd you pick this song, Julia?
I've been obsessed with it like all year, and it's funny. I've noticed a lot of songs that I loved this year, just jamming out to, had something to do with the moon. I don't know why. That was just a pattern that emerged. But this song, it got me to dive into J.J. Cale's music and learn more about him. And I'm big on music history, so anytime I can learn more about somebody who paved the way for a lot of Texas artists, I just dive into it head first. And so I've been listening to a lot of his music this year, but that song to me, it's just perfect. I love his production style. I love everything about it, and it just makes me happy.
And so we're going to play that song after the featured song, which is Opinions this week, the latest single from Julia Hatfield. So take us into the room as this song is being created.
This song I wrote really fast, and it's funny how some songs, it can be one sitting and done, and then others you go over forever and ever. This one, I was, of all things, watching Better Call Saul, and he kept talking about the greatest generation. And my grandfather, or my grandparents on my dad's side, were from the greatest generation. My grandfather was a World War II pilot. He was a P-38 pilot. And just having that influence of them growing up and seeing that there's just something in the fabric of society that we've lost that they had. And coming together to figure out what that is instead of tearing each other apart and, it coming to nothing anyway. So I think this song for me speaks to the old soul and to how we're at risk of permanently losing some foundational things about why we even work as a society, as a country. And I think we agree on way more than we're told we agree on. And I think that song, for me, my hope with that song was that it was more about coming together and less about division.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I love that you are writing about real stuff, like real stuff, the stuff you don't normally hear in songs. I love that you're releasing these actual real songs as singles as well, because usually these are the album cuts, right? Like, normally you get the real content from album cuts, and then the pandering marketing songs, the radio songs, are the ones that go out as singles. So
mhm.
why are you doing that? I'm curious.
Well, because one day I woke up and realized I couldn't. I was like, if I'm not thinking, okay, I have to make sure radio likes it, or I have to make sure if I don't have to do the whole checklist, if I just release music, because my problem was I realized I wasn't releasing music because I was overthinking how to do it. And that's the worst thing that an artist can do. And I kept getting stuck in it over and over. And finally, my husband told me, he was like, Julia, you have the music. You just need to put it out there and let it be heard. And so I think that's been encouraging me to create more often, make more music in general. And I do want to end up doing an EP or an album, of course. Every artist always wants to do that again and again. But I think the singles have been working for now, because for me, it's about getting that content out there. And we're in the era of you can't have enough content.
Yeah. And I think that's the way most artists are doing it nowadays anyway, is the one single at a time. Unless it's like a concept album and the songs go together, then why not do it that way, you know? Like, I mean, it is cheaper to do one song at a time. Studio time is uber expensive, especially if it's done right, as I'm sure you know, and have experience, because you have an EP and you have a full-length record out there, so those are things that you have done. What do you like more? Do you like the full-length EP or a single to single?
Honestly, I feel like since I always kind of go back to this point, when I won that award at the T3R Awards, I looked around and realized I wasn't very happy. And I was pretty secretive about the fact I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with anybody or anybody else. It wasn't that I didn't love the music I was releasing, but I kind of felt that the trajectory of the music I would be creating wouldn't line up forever. And that's fine. I'm somebody who's been influenced by a lot of different genres and artists, and I want to give myself the freedom to grow. And at any point, if I do want to pick a lane and commit a little more to that specifically and then put an album into that, I feel like that probably is going to be a wise option. Because at the end of the day, it's finances.
Yep.
I would make music all day, every day if I could, and I'm trying to learn Ableton and do more stuff at home.
Well, you look happy now, so that's good.
Oh, I'm so happy. For me, I'm really focused this year on just living a creative life. And I want everything I do to be somehow creative, because that's who I am and what I love to do.
And if people are out there listening in or watching and they're just hearing about Julia Hatfield, where can they follow the journey?
JuliaHatfield.com if you want to learn more. TikTok's about to be gone, which...
No, it's not. Don't say that.
I wouldn't be crying too hard. Let's put it that way. Instagram, Julia Hatfield Music. TikTok, if it's still here.
So y'all make sure you're following everywhere. Julia has music everywhere as well. Anywhere you stream or buy your music, you can find her there, Julia Hatfield. And there is an ETX Rocks episode out there with Julia and I as well. And for those of you who are saying to me, probably, ask the question. The answer is yes, she is descended from the Hatfields that you hear about from very, very, very far down the line, right?
Yeah, we'll say that. That was real far.
I think the name of the episode we did on ETX Rocks was The Real Hatfield, if you remember.
Yeah. Yeah, every time I hear somebody say The Real McCoy, I'm like, why? Why McCoy?
Exactly. Well, Julia, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. We're going to play your song now. Is that cool?
Yeah, I would absolutely love it.
All right, I'm going to shut this down. Anytime you want to come on the show, you have an open invite, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Boston.
All right. You have a good one, Julia.
You too.